Now, here's a man who's not afraid to challenge the status quo and ask the hard questions. Back to Rob Pincus.
All right, so sitting here with Maj Toure and Mike Sodini. Both are friends of mine. Mike I've known forever, done a whole bunch of things together. Maj, we've known each other probably about a year now, I guess. Worked together 10 months ago on one of your events. We just got done with a Guns for Everyone event here in Denver, and we're in what is about to be, you guys are kind of the first people to hang out in what is going to be the studio, the new remote studio for PDN and I.C.E. And this is for a project that I think is bigger than any one thing that any one of us are doing. This whole studio, right? It's about sharing information. So, this may end up, I don't know where, it may end up on a radio show, may end up in a podcast on video, a video cast, may just end up 30-second clip, something you guys said that was awesome and brilliant. You both say things that are awesome and brilliant and insightful, and neither one of you are like the stereotypical gun guy. I think it's easier to look at me and say, oh, there's Rob, the stereotypical gun guy, but I try not to be, right? And I have tried not to be that for a long time. On the training side, we all fight for gun rights. We all believe in gun rights. We all use our gun rights in different ways, exercise them in different ways, encourage the responsible exercising of them. Mike, you just today for the first time presented. We got it up on the screen behind you. First time you ever presented about Walk the Talk America. Something you talked to me about 2 months ago. And just give me like the 1 minute to 2 minute version. What is Walk the Talk America, and why is it even a thing?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me down here, and I feel blessed to be one of the first people in this secret layer town. I don't know. Yeah. But Walk the Talk is an organization that came out of a conversation that I had with a complete stranger that basically, short version would be to make me realize that as an industry, we do not do enough working with the mental health side of things. Tragedy happens, people blame the gun, we blame mental health, and then we get stuck in this vicious cycle. So it basically came out of reading a position paper by Mental Health of America, is one of the largest and longest existing mental health associations or organizations that's out there. And basically their whole thing was, we don't take a stance on guns because we don't like the stigma that gets put on us, basically coming from guns. So I realized that the two organizations are running parallel to each other because we deal with stigma every day, right? And they deal with stigma. So every time we say, oh, it's not the gun, it's that crazy person, it beats down that person who may be going through something traumatic to not go get help because they feel the stigma is real.
So when you talk about stigma, you talked about that for a second with how we feel that, they feel that, and that they took a position that you read, and you shared that position paper with me. I think it was position paper number 72, that said, this isn't the issue. Guns, they aren't the issue. Just like mental health as an umbrella isn't the issue. Talk to me about that stigma a little bit. The way you perceive it from firearms world. You're the president of Eagle Imports. You're the president of Avidity Arms. You're a firearm manufacturer. You're a firearms importer, which also means you sell firearms. You've been in this industry forever. Your family's been in it for almost 3 decades. You've been in it full time now for a while. You played in and out of it as part of your family business for a long time. Talk to me about that stigma.
Well, that's interesting. I think about this a lot, and for me to get involved to help the people that have the stigma actually, I'm going to go into a story that kind of hits close to home. A lot of people don't know this. You know this. The former president and one of my best friends of my company actually committed suicide, and he actually used one of the guns that I imported in the United States, Bursa. He had a traumatic experience happen. He went to the office. Our guns are there, locked up. He was the president of the company. He went home, and for whatever be the reason, I don't know, he killed himself. He took his own life. So I think about stigma all the time. Like, I think about, he was in a situation where he's in the gun industry, and he may have felt like, I can't tell somebody I'm going through a tough time. And maybe that got to a boiling point because he didn't want to lose his job. He didn't want to lose what he does, what he loves. He didn't want to give our industry a bad name. He had nowhere to turn to because that's something that we don't talk about. And it's on this, so working hand in hand, that's what that stigma is. You know, whether or not you're in the firearms or whether or not you work at a restaurant, but maybe you're high up and you don't want to tell somebody that you're having a tough time because you don't want to lose any of your rights.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge, that idea. And sharing that story, I know that's hard for you. I can see it in your face, and it's not something you've talked about very much. And it's obviously something you're going to be talking about a lot more, because I know it drives you with Walk the Talk America, and it will be part of that story. And one of the things that came out of today was other people sharing their stories with you. So today's the first time you really got up in front of a group of people that you didn't know, didn't trust, whatever, and you talked about this, and you got some powerful feedback.
I got some amazing feedback. It's insane when you make someone, and obviously Maj knows about this. We were just talking about this before we went on air. When you give someone a place to go where they feel safe, where they can talk about it and not be judged, where they're not meant to feel stupid. You know, there were people that were coming up to me. There were people sharing their stories while I was talking. You know, but then after. It's amazing how many people lined up to kind of just share their story. A couple of people were brought to tears because they were like, "Thank you, finally somebody that, you know, said it aloud. That you know, I can basically come out and talk about these things and not be judged. Like, I'm on the radar now, you know. Whereas like, it's like, okay, you know, once you're on the radar, you're like, oh, because there's other people like me, and so or somebody gets it. You know, I think that makes people feel good.
Oh, it really does. Maj, I know you just learned about this organization and this initiative. How, like, specifically to mental health, has there been any impact for you personally? Have you heard some of these stories, or did you notice any of that today? Like, what are your thoughts on how important this part is?
Oh, this part is extremely important because it's a double bubble for urban America. Urban America, like, you know, we'll joke about it. We'll say, like, I was just watching a movie with Kevin Hart and The Rock, and he was saying to his wife, she was like, we're having a rough time in our marriage, you know. Maybe we should, you know, go get some therapy. And he's like, baby, come on, like, black people, we don't go therapy or go to, you know, we don't do that. We go watch the movie Barbershop. Like, that's what we do. You know what I mean? Or we go to the barbershop. Or we watch the movie Barbershop.
Right. Talk to your friends, talk it out, laugh about it, make a joke.
And then move on. But sometimes a lot of those things, so it's one, you got it from the urban guy thing first. Then you got it from the, oh, you're in the gun community now too. So it's like more of a layered nuance of, so I definitely can't, you know. And it's like, you know, having the conversations about a lot of stigmas that, you know, the conversation we're having today about weed or whatever the thing is that you're a part of that someone has, you know, culturally a group of people have said, you cannot talk about this. You know, and I don't think people, I think more people than want to admit for that exact same reason, go through that on several different things, whatever they are. In my neighborhood or neighborhoods across the country, I mean, it could even be something as simple as I have a passion for firearms. I'm not supposed to have guns.
Right? And I think that's just it, right? And not even if you're not supposed to have them in some legal sense. I know what we're talking about. I'm just talking about, you know, that's not a conversation that comes up in polite mixed society unless you see the NRA sticker, like, we don't have a secret handshake, but something, right? Some indicator that, oh, they must be a gun person. I know for me, I go to a wine tasting event or something like that, and people, you're not talking about guns generally there, but if somebody knows me, you know, oh, you're the guy, they recognize me, you're the guy from the videos, or I've seen you on Outdoor Channel. Now all of a sudden, it's some people coming up to you like, oh, by the way, I have a gun in the closet, my dad gave it to me, is there a range around you, whatever that is, right? So Mike, let's address that for a second, because there is that parallel. So not just the stigma of mental health with our veterans not wanting to appear weak, or people inside the gun industry, or, you know, in the urban community, the same kind of a thing, but that masculine thing. But even for us now, that gun thing, like, how has being a member of a gun industry family, because you've run around in some circles that I would definitely say are not always pro-gun, you're not always hanging out at like gun shops and the sporting goods section at Walmart in your life. So you've been all over the world, you've been involved in a lot of different careers. Talk to me about how that gun stigma affects you. Like, somebody walks up to you, what do you do? All right, the first thing, are you a gun owner? Is that how you identify? Or are there times when you hold that back for reasons?
Well, obviously, you know, most of my friends are actually not on that side. They appreciate what I do, but they definitely do not fall in line with the identity politics that usually comes with one side, right? Yeah, I mean, there are times when, you know, it's very funny you said that. I asked my daughter the other day, I said, does anybody at your school ever ask what your father does? And she's like, no. And I was like, good, we'll leave it at that.
Right. Right.
But it's almost like well, we grew up in the East Coast. It's almost like that scene in like the mafia movies, right, where like the guy's trying to live the normal life, and it's like, what do the kids do? Well, I'm in sanitation, right? Like, 'cause he doesn't want to talk about what he does. Now, there's a legal issue there, and I don't want to obviously get attacks from the, oh, you're comparing owning guns to illegal. No, what I'm comparing is it's not normal. So what I want to do when we come back, we're going to do the commercial, pay the bills, do that thing. When we come back, I really want to get into sort of more of this conversation about the stigma and how that affects the work that you're doing with Black Guns Matter, Maj. I appreciate you being here. But once again, we're getting this started. We're trying this out, and this is going to be a new thing, talking on the radio, talking with people from the gun industry about issues that we don't always talk about when we're just talking about gun world.
I heard your house was broken into the other night.
Yeah, it was so scary. But you know what? I was brave. It all came back to me. I took a class at Cape Gun Works, and everything I learned from that class had me prepared. I stood my ground. I protected myself and my family. The intruder ended up leaving and getting arrested.
Wow, close call. You are so brave. I need to take that class. How do I get certified and own my own gun?
I'll tell you what, why don't we go over to Cape Gun Works in Hyannis today?
Let's do it.
All right. And you know what? They also have a website, capegunworks.com.
Last year I was at my lowest, going through some pretty serious depression. A couple of friends of mine stopped by the house and said they were worried about me. Said they'd feel a lot better if they could hold on to my firearms until things turned around. I think they saved my life.
If your loved ones are struggling, talk to them about temporarily storing their guns away from their home, because things do get better.
Hey, I'm Mark Walters, host of Armed American Radio. I want to take you back now to Rob Pincus, one of the most recognized voices in the firearms community.
All right, so we're back sitting here with Mike Sodini and Maj Toure. Maj Toure is with Black Guns Matter, and Mike Sodini just launched the Walk the Talk America organization, really a foundation that he started as a collaboration between people interested in mental health issues and people interested in gun rights. And as a leader in the firearms community, he thought it was important to reach out kind of across the aisle to mental health professionals and bring them into our world, see what they can actually do to help us, and particularly help fund a lot of those initiatives that they might want to do that we can find value in, whether that's help people with trauma, help people with suicide prevention. Range owners, I think, is one of the projects I think is going to be really interesting to help them empower their employees, start spotting things, school safety, and then obviously some of the issues that deal with gun negligence when we have someone who's maybe got a substance use or abuse issue, maybe somebody suffering from dementia. You know, you got to take grandfather's keys away. You're also probably going to want to take the firearms away, or at least consider that, and that's anathema in some places. Dealing with Black Guns Matter, in some places, just owning a gun or going into a gun shop to purchase a gun legally might be anathema in some of the environments that you're running around in. Talk to me, Maj. What about Black Guns Matter is really tied into this whole issue of stigma, and how are you breaking it down?
Yeah, so the stigma is generally more layered in the sense of you didn't even get to the point of having the firearm. You might even have, again, these passions for firearms. You watch movies, oh man, what kind of gun is that, da-da-da. And you kind of like, the stigma there becomes from the beginning, you can't even be open about it lawfully because of the fact that you're going to be, oh, you're one of those crazy people. You know what I'm saying? So that label, that term, you know, that off top, it becomes a stigma. Now, just because the stigma's there and you don't want it to be placed on you, you don't mysteriously, your appreciation for firearms doesn't disappear. It's still there, so you consistently trying to pretend. And then there's nobody around, because then if you have a firearm, you don't got no charges. He must be the cops. So that's looked at a certain way. You know, all of those things are things that we can eliminate a lot of that by saying, hey, this is something that we can do. You know, just because, you know, the false narrative that's been projected onto you has been, oh, if you got a gun or if you're interested in guns, you're crazy, or you must be a cop, or you must be a rat or something like that. By telling people, giving them a broader understanding of that, we break that stigma. And I think a bigger thing, too, is breaking the stigma of, you know, if you go lawfully go into a store to purchase a firearm, like the police going to show up at your door the next day. A lot of these stigmas are based in complete falsehoods and like fear. Like at the root of it is just like really people being afraid to, you know, in the beginning you do. It's good to have a support system of people or a network of, you know, resources that helps you along. but that's just to get you out of the space of being afraid. You know, I'm scared that if I'm perceived this way, people are going to ostracize me or ridicule me or whatever.
And what's the biggest mechanism for removing the fear, as it usually is, I would think?
Education.
There you go, right? So that's the thing. Education, educating people that there is a legal path. It is okay, you know, and that to me is so incredibly important. Obviously, that's what I've primarily done inside of the firearms industry is educate people. It's educate them how to shoot, educate them which kind of firearms to pick, educate them about how to safely and responsibly store them or stage them in their house, how to carry them for law enforcement, for military guys, how to use their firearms, and then, of course, the surrounding tactics better. So obviously I'm passionately involved in education all the time, but I have come to find that really that's the root of all of this, right? If we're talking about ignorance, well, let's educate you about it. If we're talking about bias, prejudice, let's educate about that. If we're talking about stigma, which is what we're talking about today, that's about education too. So what did you find in terms of the parallels, Mike, going back to you for a second, with looking at mental health and firearms world? What's the biggest parallel point that you think is important to educate people about in terms of overcoming that stigma? Well, they're all crazy, or oh, they're all dangerous because they have guns.
See, that's an interesting question because the way I look at some scenarios is like, let me bring it back just to like me getting into firearms. Okay, growing up, basically a liberal lifestyle, being surrounded by liberal people, right? I went into the industry with no like judgment on how things work because I didn't know the difference between gun A and gun Z, right? So I went in there with like no bias in terms of like how the people treated me or whatever. I just grew up with some people in my family that were gun people, and basically that was something that wasn't talked about amongst my friends. I mean, you know, you heard about guns in songs or somebody who carried a gun illegally, whatever. But so it kind of helped me learn. So I had no problem trying to understand it. Mm-hmm. So like when I looked at everything like, okay, I'm looking at this, and this is what I've been told, but this is not true, and I know it because I've been sitting here watching it. It's ingrained in my head now. So now when I go back, I don't get emotional when I'm talking to the other side when they say something stupid or something that is completely not true. So you know, for me, with running parallel to each other, we got to break down that wall first to be like, listen, there's not a stupid question. I'm not going to make you feel bad. Like, I'm going to bring you into my world, just like they're doing for me, right? Like, that mental health side is doing for me, like correcting my language, making me understand, like getting away from saying, oh, it's just a lunatic. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like what I think about that a lot because as humans, right, we just always kind of just go right straight into our group identifier, right? Like, we're tribal. Like,
for sure. And that's the prejudice and the bias and the misunderstanding. And then we get mad. So we say somebody's crazy, and then someone wants to get offended at us. Well, that's no different than somebody saying, "Oh, that's an AR-15" when it's actually a hunting rifle, and we get mad about that. Like, why not understand from the point of ignorance? Now, if somebody says, "Oh, I understand that's different, but I'm saying it's an AR-15 because I want to provoke people to not like the AR-15," that's a whole other thing. Right. But when we're truly talking about ignorance and understanding, that's education. What's the most important point that you internally? I think honestly, a lot of people in the gun industry might think you're like some kind of activist to gun industry bringing, you know, itself to black people, urban America, the hood, whatever you want to say. But I've seen you do the work that you do, and the work that I think you do that is the best isn't about educating, you know, some random gun owner about the black person that's going to come into a shop. You're talking to people about their ignorance in relation to guns and legal ownership. What's the biggest thing that you find there that's important to convey to someone who says, "Oh, I don't even want to know," or "I don't know," or "I think I know, but I don't"? So
if it's a person that doesn't want to know, I first off top is I respect their right to not want to know. It might sound weird to me that you don't want to know about this very important thing, but I'm going to respect your right to not even want to know. That's the first. If they're the person that I'm aware that you don't know, and you think you know, I usually won't engage them directly. I'll kind of bring them around other people that are kind of like talking the same language that I'm talking. And because it's so normal in that room, their defense mechanisms are already lowered. So one, they're outnumbered and no one's attacking them. And then I use groupthink on them because there's 6 of us just talking about cool stuff that we like, and nobody's like, "You don't like this," because nobody even knows that you don't like the thing. Right. So kind of like bring them into that world. And if they're the person that kind of like is afraid, I know that you don't know, but you don't want to verbalize that you don't know, I can have more one-on-one with that person. I do the same thing in the group think room, but just the collective, let me share this with you. Just we kind of like going to just be doing this stuff for something as simple as, I know that you're interested, but you don't want to ask. We're in the car and I'll go, oh, I got to go somewhere real quick. I'll go to the gun shop and say, hey, go in here with me real quick. And I won't even get a gun. I'll just get ammo.
All right, I'm really interested in, especially that first part, that person who says, they don't want to know, and you're willing to say, you know what, I'm sorry, you don't want to know. Sometimes it's people that we need to interact with, someone who has that gun illegally, somebody who's doing something reckless, somebody who's endangering their family. We're going to talk about that after this next commercial break.
When it comes to defending yourself and your property, knowledge and experience add up to safety. That's why safety is the weapon of choice at Cape Gun Works. More and more people every day, especially women, are seeking out better ways to protect themselves through Cape Gun Works courses and private lessons. Of course, Cape Gun Works offers popular license to carry classes, but they also answer the big question about weapon ownership, which is what's next? And the answer to that lies in your personal goals. Cape Gun Works offers a number of safety and assistance courses for individuals and couples too, like first aid, CPR, and defense workshops. And don't forget ladies' night as well as date night, where there's romance on the range. See their events calendar at capegunworks.com and explore your options for a monthly or seasonal membership too. Take the first step towards security with safety as your weapon of choice at Cape Gun Works.
Bristlecone Shooting honors the rich legacy of firearms in American culture without intimidating new shooters. Jacqueline and Brian Clark knew that such a unique range required a unique name, so they looked to the bristlecone pine for inspiration. One of the oldest living organisms, bristlecone trees can live as long as 5,000 years. Surviving the freezing conditions of the alpine tree line, the bristlecone becomes more beautiful. Over time, the tree bends into fantastic shapes, molded by the Rocky Mountain winds. Jacqueline and Brian saw parallels to the Second Amendment, which has endured in a constantly changing, sometimes caustic culture. Emulating the strength, longevity, and adaptability of the bristlecone pine, Jacqueline and Brian designed a well-lit, technologically advanced facility where all levels of shooters would feel welcome. Exercise your inalienable right to bear arms in a friendly, inviting atmosphere. Visit Bristlecone Shooting in Lakewood today.
Hey, Mark Walters here, host of Armed American Radio. Let me send you back to the man who's not afraid to challenge the status quo, Mr. Rob Pincus.
All right, Rob Pincus back with you. I'm sitting here with Mike Sodini from Walk the Talk America and Maj Toure from Black Guns Matter. And we're talking about the crossroads of education and stigma and mitigating those stigmas when it comes to firearms ownership, the normalization of responsible firearms ownership, and especially some of the mental health issues that surround those who suffer from a lot of issues that can affect their responsible firearms ownership, or maybe even whether or not they should be able to exercise that right that we cling to so dearly, that is incredibly important to all Americans, that right to keep and bear arms. And while some people don't necessarily think it's important to them, it is. It's important to our way of life. And that's what we were talking about last segment with Maj Toure, with some people who don't even want to know things. They don't want to be educated. It's not that they think they know. That's a whole different person. You broke that down really well. There's three different people. And that one person who says, no, I don't even want to know about that. I don't care about the right to keep and bear arms. I don't care about responsible firearms ownership. And sometimes that's someone who won't ever have a gun, and it's a civil rights issue if we educate them. Sometimes, however, it's a person who has a gun recklessly or negligently. That might mean they're going to get in trouble legally because they could own the gun legally, but they don't want to go do it right. Or it could mean they're going to get their kids hurt or somebody else hurt because they aren't doing it well. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about that in your community.
Yeah, so if it's those two people, if it's the guy that I know, the guy that's carrying unlawfully, especially if I know he has the ability to carry lawfully, so usually I'll ask them those questions. It's like, yo, you don't have no F's on your jacket. Like, what are you doing? You have no felonies. And it's like, nah, I just don't want to go down there. And then I'll show them, look, so one, you're in especially if they're in a state like Pennsylvania, you're in a shall issue state. It's going to be $20, some paperwork, bro. if you do not do this and you get caught, one, let me show you how you're probably going to get caught. See that lack of holster that you have there? You see that officers can tell that you're doing this with your shirt every couple of seconds? That's how they're going to know you're going to catch the felony. Your bail is going to be high. It's going to affect you different ways. Now, let me tell you what appendix carry is. Let me show you what this is. When I show them what their potential losses are, right, in regards to, yo, you're going to get caught. You're going to get caught. I'm telling you, I'm around a lot of law enforcement and that you live in this area and they are looking for that, right? So that's one. So that's how I inform that person. There's never a guy that I say, yo, let me tell you a way that you could not, go catch this charge. They never after that point go, you know what? So what? I would prefer catching the charge. No one ever says that.
Because you break it down. You make it simple. You explain to them. It really isn't, and I'm not trying to minimize it, but it's not that big a deal. There are steps. You should take those steps because why? However hard it is, in whatever state you're in, Texas is one of the most kind of structured licensed carry states. There's other states where it's difficult, but if you can achieve that, it's way better than catching the consequences on the back end. Some people just don't know the consequences.
Right, and they don't know the consequences because they weren't even told that this is a rule.
Right.
You know what I mean? So then most of the times when it happens is because they did go into the store and bought it lawfully. So in their mind, it's like, I know I'm not the bad guy. You know what I'm saying?
They had the background check.
I had the background check.
So you're talking somebody that legally owns the gun, but they're just carrying it around because almost like, hey, come on, man, jump through that extra hoop.
Yep. Now, the person that, so it's one more person is the guy that's carrying, he knows I got a felony, The best I can do for him is focus on safety. And like, okay, how are you securing a firearm in your house?
All right, now this is controversial. I have said several times, I think I said it in front of you and when we were recording for that first Black Guns Matter event in Atlanta we did together. I'll stand there and say, look, if your nephew, cousin, brother, you're asking for a friend, wink, wink, is in the drug business, right? They got a felony, whatever. That's what they do. It's not Colorado where it's legal. That's what they're doing. And they have a gun shoved in their hands. They're not trying to kill somebody. They're not trying to rob somebody. But they don't want to get robbed. They don't want to get killed. They're carrying it for protection. And they go home and they pull that gun out of their pants and they put it on the counter with the kids in the house. That's an area I'm concerned about. That's firearms negligence. That's firearms. You're in danger. I can't. Well, how can I sleep as an educator and say, oh, well, he's an illegal guy. I'm not even going to talk to him. No, I'm worried about the kids. I'm worried about the neighbors.
The justification for that, and that's what it's amazing to me when I see people try to give you pushback on that, because it's like almost like you're saying, okay, so this guy doesn't have the right to get informed to protect himself or his children from trauma, like negligence.
From the trauma. Right? And that's the thing. So do I advocate for him to carry a gun? No. I don't advocate for him to sell drugs illegally. Right. Okay? But we live where we live. It's real where it's real. And that is real for some people. And if someone comes to you, I know you deal with this relatively frequently, probably more frequently than I do by far, right? I'm the guy that's had a badge forever. I'm the guy that's, the gun guy, whatever. Not a lot of people are coming to me and say, hey, I'm worried about this guy unless they want him arrested, right? Like that kind of intervention. Right. There's a better kind of intervention that comes from education. Right. Now, what about the person that says, now they're legal, but they're like, no, I don't want to lock the gun up. I've taught my kids, or my kids don't know where it is, that kind of thing.
I show them the trauma. I usually use the kids with thumbs angle. And I'll say, okay, that's cool. So you know why most like little babies like shoot themselves in the face? And they're like, it's kind of like cringeworthy. It's like, because their little fingers, like they can't pull the triggers regularly. So they'll put their little thumbs and they shoot themselves in the face. So if you're okay, if you're okay with your daughter, like potentially shooting herself in the face, cool, I'll stop talking to you. Yeah. And usually after that, they're like, come on, bro, like why would you even... Well, I'm saying... Because
that's a thing.
That's a
thing. That's what happens. That's that consequence.
Right.
Now, it's interesting. You went right to the trauma as the trigger because in the conversations I know you've been having, Mike, with mental health professionals, I was surprised how important the trauma aspect was to them in terms of their feeling like they could really influence the firearms community and the gun owning community with help. What are you talking about that?
Actually, that was kind of a surprise to me as well. There was at one point when you were talking to Debbie from the MHA that basically like I couldn't wrap my head around the trauma angle, meaning that somebody's been exposed to some serious trauma. could be affected by that trauma so much that causes more trauma for them later, right? And so I'm looking at it from how do we stop young children, these people that they say, these psychopaths that go in these school shootings. But I was thinking it's a step further, right? It's like, what do we do about all those kids that experience that? Because that might give them a reason, or whatever's happening, because it's something that's never been addressed. It's like, what about me now?
Right.
I may go later, and that might affect me 5, 7, 10 years, right? And now I'm violent. I haven't dealt with any of these issues. I have no one to talk to. Right. I'm a ticking time bomb. Whether I hurt myself or hurt somebody else, you know what I mean?
Right.
You obviously, both of you know that like one little experience could cause you to do something that could affect you the rest of your life. Right. And it doesn't have to happen right after that experience. It could happen 10 years down the line, then it manifests itself because you never dealt with it. And it's from that traumatic experience. So it's almost like going deeper. It's almost like getting further upstream, to predict the unpredictable. Like that's I had to stop and have it explained to me. You know what I mean?
No, it really does. It's that, and then it becomes a cycle, right? Because then it's, okay, so you witness this trauma, or you witness this violence, now you have trauma, it affects you in some way that now it develops a potential mental illness, right? Now you've got something that triggers violence in you, potentially. And not everybody's going to respond the same way, but the idea is to get in front of that, to talk about it, to realize that it's a consequence. One of the ways that it really affected me was this idea of the range operators, right? I've had some very good friends, range operators, be involved in situations where someone rented a gun, went out on the range, and killed themselves with it. And they were never prepared for that trauma. I think intellectually we know, okay, maybe that could happen. And that gets back to what you were doing, Maj. Intellectually, sure, they realize that a kid could shoot themselves, but when you make it like, no, your daughter's shooting herself in her face because she has thumbs, and you make it tangible, that's different. So you go into the range and you say, well, look, it happened here, it happened here, and it happened here. It's hard to deny. We know that it can happen. We don't like to talk about it a lot. But how do we mitigate the potential damage? Well, one of those ways is talk about preparing people for what's going to happen so they can deal with that. So when we come back, we're going to talk about the way that trauma can manifest itself in a way that maybe isn't dangerous to other people, but specifically suicide and suicide prevention, and the way that trauma might be related to military service. And of course, anytime you talk about veterans and military service and potentially taking away their Second Amendment rights or asking them to ask for help, that is a big deal. So we'll talk about that when we come
back. Hi, I'm Mark Craighead, founder of Crossbreed Holsters. I designed our top-selling holster, the Super Tuck Deluxe, to solve the problems of being poked, pinched, and gouged while carrying concealed. The Super Tuck Deluxe is the most comfortable, most concealable holster on the market today. Its unique design conforms to your individual body shape.
Finally, now I can feel safe and comfortable.
We offer a 2-week free trial and a lifetime warranty.
Bristlecone Shooting honors the rich legacy of firearms in American culture without intimidating new shooters. Jacqueline and Brian Clark knew that such a unique range required a unique name, so they looked to the bristlecone pine for inspiration. One of the oldest living organisms, bristlecone trees can live as long as 5,000 years. Surviving the freezing conditions of the alpine tree line, the bristlecone becomes more beautiful. Over time, the tree bends into fantastic shapes, molded by the Rocky Mountain winds. Jacqueline and Brian saw parallels to the Second Amendment, which has endured in a constantly changing, sometimes caustic culture. Emulating the strength, longevity, and adaptability of the bristlecone pine, Jacqueline and Brian designed a well-lit, technologically advanced facility where all levels of shooters would feel welcome. Exercise your inalienable right to bear arms in a friendly, inviting atmosphere. Visit Bristlecone Shooting in Lakewood today.
Now, here's a man who's not afraid to challenge the status quo and ask the hard questions. Back to Rob Pincus.
All right, we are back. We're talking with Maj Toure of Black Guns Matter and Mike Sodini, who has recently launched Walk the Talk America. And Walk the Talk America is an organization designed to formulate a collaboration between mental health professionals and firearms industry leaders, not just to promote gun rights and education throughout the world, but also to promote responsibility and awareness in the way that the firearms community deals with mental health issues, way we talk about mental health issues, and really to encourage both sides to think about the rights and responsibilities that go along with each thing. Firearms ownership, dealing with all of our own mental health and those in our environment. One of the most important groups of people that we talk a lot about in the firearms industry that we also know very well deal with mental health issues are veterans. And that issue, of course, is PTSD. And we talk about Mission 22 and all those organizations out there that exist to create awareness and hopefully prevention of suicide. From a soft side, right? A lot of it's about, getting out there and getting back into life and being successful and dealing with people and interacting and getting all the things done that you need to get done to be a successful person and to be happy once you've gotten out of the military. But the reality is some people are too far along for that softer side to help, and we might need to get into an intervention mode. And I know that is a very touchy subject inside of the firearms community. It's a very touchy subject inside of the veteran community. Earlier in the show, both of you hit on this idea of masculinity, right? And of course, we're gonna generalize here, and we're gonna talk about that combat vet, probably a man, probably seen some trauma. He's got some PTSD. Now he's got trouble in the civilian life. Maybe he's lost his job. Maybe he's lost his wife. Maybe he's got an alcohol problem. Maybe he's not being helped the right way by the VA, and he's got an opioid problem. And does that person need to feel threatened that we might say to them, hey, maybe this isn't the right time to go to the range? Of course, we all know the tragedy of Chris Kyle and what happened when he was trying to do outreach using firearms as a method of therapy. We know sometimes that works, but it doesn't always work. There's not always going to be a hard and fast rule. What are we doing in terms of thinking about and talking to people? And Mike, I'm going to let you go first on this from Walk the Talk America. What are your thoughts on, is there a time, first of all, I'll ask you, is there a time that we say to our veteran friends, hey, maybe let me clean the guns, or maybe, hey, let me take the firing pins, and how do we bring that up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything is in delivery and how you frame it up. I mean, if you approach somebody and you're like, you're a lunatic right now, or I like the way you just said it, right? Like, hey, maybe let me take your guns for the weekend and clean them, if you can do that legally, right? And not commit a felony. Whereas in New Jersey, that isn't going to work out too well. But I think that it's one of the things in mental health that they taught me before stage 4. That's their saying, right? Like before stage 4 cancer, like don't let something get so far that it's now gone. Don't wait till something traumatic happens. So I feel like you have to approach a veteran about it. Just something you said, like something that bugs me about the Chris Kyle thing. Like even that can add to stigma, right? Because I know I have personal friendships with some people that actually have PTSD, and they needed the range. They needed that. Obviously, they were way before like a stage 4 scenario, but now everybody's got this. Can't go to the range with someone who suffers from PTSD because of the Chris Kyle thing, because we lost like this amazing hero that is put up on this pedestal, and you're like. So now it's like a no-no to talk about that. But I think you definitely have to hit it head on. I think it's ridiculous not to. Because then you find out that you have stage 4 on your hand.
Right. Now, I'm going to ask this completely out of ignorance and expect you to be able to educate me on it. But one might think, from my perspective, as someone who knows a lot of veterans and has dealt with a lot of veterans, that there is an overlapping or maybe even compounded problem when you deal with some of the even maybe institutional or community memory of the draft and the effect that we have on some of the lower income parts of the community, right? And that's going to be overlap with that urban community you're talking to, and the ramifications of, hey, we're going to make you basically go fight for our country, then we're not really going to help you that much when you get back, and all those other issues that layer on top of it.
Right. See, it's like W.E.B. Du Bois said, African Americans have to have a dual consciousness, meaning like, okay, this is my community, I can communicate this way, and then with the mainstream society, I'll communicate this way. When you're that person from that demographic and you then become a gun person too, now you almost have a quadruple consciousness that you have to like kind of like live with. The thing there is, in that scenario, like you said, the delivery for that, I can predict what is going to happen in any hood bar. It's like, that's the bad guy. He just looks scary, but he's really a nice person. She's a mean like barmaid, whatever. I can predict that room.
So I can do that in a Starbucks.
Yes, you can. It's like she's going to mess your order up. And doing that in that scenario and seeing, I went to school with him. He seems a little bit more off now. as opposed to saying, we tend to go, oh, he must have got a bad batch. He's on drugs, whatever. You can, dialogue. And what I do in those scenarios is sometimes as simple as developing and giving people the opportunity to just express themselves. So a lot of the guys will come to our classes, and that was a big thing when we would, my partner would be like, closer to the end of the events when the Q&A section would happen, and I would always go over, because I'm like, these people need to get it out. You know what I mean? So we get charged the extra hour for the venue, whatever, right? But that person in that moment, like you were saying today, people are coming up to you like in tears, like, man, I've been holding on to this for so long. So if you imagine that in a layer of a constant thing, and I don't maybe have a bunch of money to even do retail therapy, all of those things matter. But having a person and saying it and doing it, that tactic that y'all both said, as far as like, yo man, let me clean your guns this weekend. For me, it's for me. I mean, you helped me out a whole lot. Let me just at least, I got this.
And don't you think they know? Don't you think sometimes like that friend's going to pick up on what you're saying, but you don't have to say it. It's more implicit than explicit. So people see this as this big controversial, like you're going to, certainly we're not talking about sending the police. We're not talking about calling, whoever to come over and intervene. We're talking about this is your friend. This is your family member, right? This is your coworker. And it seems like, I think, just like you said, you can kind of read that bar. The people in that bar kind of read you because it's your community and they read what you're putting out. I think that's really important.
Yeah, well, it's funny, Rob, because you know me. I'm an open book. I'll tell any story, and I don't answer to anybody, so I don't have to worry about the things I say, whether they be stupid or whatever. But it's kind of like the way you approached me when I was going through my divorce in 2012 as a friend.
I've been divorced a lot.
Yeah, you are the king of divorce, and no, but like to frame it up for the people that are just listening, I was going through a horrible divorce, and I had 2 children. And sometimes those are stressful situations because divorce is never good. No one ever says, I want to wake up today and have a great divorce and I hope this goes perfect. It does not work like that. And I was going through a thing where I was sad and depressed about it, and you had read that I was, and I remember you telling me it's okay. It can get better, man. Don't let it affect you as a father. And you travel so much, and I know that stuff can wear on you, and people say like you failed or you felt like you failed because you couldn't make this woman happy. Or whatever, like the way you framed it up for me was very peaceful, and it was very like I'm talking to you like a man, not like talking down to you. Just saying, look, I'm here if you need me. It's okay. It makes a world of difference,
And when you say that read happens both ways. 1, thank you for like helping me through this, and 2, thank you for packaging it in a manner where it's like, okay, cool. It takes a bit of the sting off of it.
So I think that's really what both of you are doing. I mean, I think it's a great place to leave this conversation right now. And obviously there's plenty more conversation to have. People can have that conversation with you through Black Guns Matter, Mike. They can have the conversation with you through Walk the Talk America. And that's really what those organizations are doing, is they're opening up a conversation and framing it in a way, hopefully, that responsible gun owners can hear it. People that are in the urban community that are interested in being responsible gun owners are already gun owners and want to make sure they're doing the right thing, getting the best education the way they can hear it. I really appreciate you guys hitting this opportunity right now to open some doors, to be there, to package, to frame. 10 seconds real quick, Maj, where can people find out more information?
They can hit us up. They can just email us, info@officialblackgunsmatter.com.
All right, and Mike?
Walk the Talk America on basically any social media outlet or Eagle Imports, okay?
That's right. Yeah, you actually have a business behind it, Eagle Imports. So again, this was Rob Pincus. This was our first show in the new studio in the Western HQ in Colorado. Thanks for listening.